Hello, everyone. My name is Hannah Bothner. I am the short film program director for Tallgrass Film Festival. I am here today with Nikos Campbell, who is the director of the short film Unemployment Hotline. Thank you so much for being here with us today. My very first question for you is, why did you decide to make this film? Where did the inspiration come?
Yeah. So the inspiration for this film kind of came from it was during lockdown and my life stopped. I wasn't doing anything, and then just saw a bunch of my friends were unemployed, and then like everyone I knew either knew someone really close to them that was unemployed or wasn't unemployed themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And then it really started for me to investigate into going into making this film was when I saw a paper in I think it was the New York Times of a family filing for unemployment in a rodeo building. It was, they were all, it was like a desolate rodeo building, and it was like a family of 5 with their kids there. And that image just kind of felt haunting. It was just this is not how it should be. So then I saw, and I found a subreddit called r/unemployment.
Mm-hmm.
And then everyone was sharing their stories there. And I had the idea to it felt hard to give people a platform where I could interview them and get the same kind of intimacy and vulnerability. So I set up a hotline kind of in contrast to the unemployment lines not being able to be picked up. No one was getting through. So I set up a hotline that people could call in and just share their story, share whatever they want, and call as many times. So that's kind of how I found my way onto the film. Yeah.
And how many calls did you end up getting at that hotline? Do you know?
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's around 80, but it's around 4 hours of straight voicemail.
Oh, wow. So
Yeah.
How did you, when you were going through the process, how did you decide which ones you wanted to focus on?
Yeah, that's a really good question. It was honestly very hard, but what I did is I would just listen through all of them and then kind of first go for what is the shared experience. So then look at that. So I want to represent the shared experience of people calling, but also there's these extremely intimate and vulnerable moments that are so personal to people, and I wanted to also show those. So it's kind of finding the balance of what is something that someone is really sharing that's personal, that everyone could connect to, because I think the more personal moments people shared are the things that really you can really connect to in it. So it's just kind of finding that balance of am I honestly representing all these voices and saying what they would want to be said from what they're calling in, and also making it so it's sharing kind of that extreme vulnerability.
Absolutely. Yeah. Was that a difficult process for you? I can't imagine sitting and listening through that many hours of these must have been very rough stories.
Yeah, no, it was extremely hard. I think it probably took me to get it down to around even 15 minutes. I think that probably took me a month, 2 months.
Oh, wow.
And then I kept cutting it down a little bit throughout the months, and then I started filming it. But yeah, no, it was really hard because I'd have to just take a break. You'd listen through and I can't keep going. It's just you need to emotionally sit with them. And then it also I think it's hard, but it was a very good thing to spread out the time without I was cutting it, because I would go for walks and then I'd just be thinking about what stuck with me throughout the time that I've listened to them over and over again.
Absolutely. And how did you decide what what you wanted? Did you have the idea to have the visuals of essentially people representing the stories from the beginning, or was that something that came along after you read or after you listened to the stories?
I think when I set it up initially, I didn't have the exact vision in my head of how to put the visual, but I think once I got them, it was pretty clear to me, because I knew I didn't want to reach out to anyone individually, because I felt like that'd be a violation of privacy. And so I wanted to just kind of represent how these voicemails felt visually. And that came pretty quick after I started getting them.
And the filming of that must have taken place during lockdown. Were there, at least during the pandemic, were there any big challenges with the actual filming process?
Yeah, it was a bit of a challenge. I waited until I was fully vaccinated and then could wear a mask the whole time, so it felt as safe as possible. And then so that was a little bit of a challenge. I just waited until it felt like it was actually safe enough, and then restrictions were down. And it was just me that shot. Sometimes I would have a friend, but usually it was just only me with a camera, and then I would find people that would be willing to be in it or that were struggling with similar things. So there was definitely some challenge there, but I think it was in like a moment where cases were down more, and it felt pretty safe to be filming like that.
Absolutely. What do you want people to take away the most from your film?
Yeah, that's a really good question, and it's something that it's interesting for me to think about, because I don't know if I have like an exact thing that I think anyone should take away from it. But what I hope you do is you would come into this film and just listen and be really open to hearing all these people's stories, because it's not just them. They're so shared. There's so many people that are dealing with the same thing. And then like, if that does resonate with you and you sit with how deep of an issue this is that we should be addressing, then like go to action. That would be the best outcome, if you would go to action. You'd want to advocate for a better unemployment system, because it's something we all in America pay into, that once we have mass unemployment, it failed us. So like looking at that systematically, but first just hearing people's stories, I think is the start. Yeah.
Absolutely. Do you have like, this might be too difficult of a question, because I know anytime people ask me my favorite of anything, it's, so hard to come up with an answer. But do you have a story that was your favorite or really struck you from curating?
Yeah, I don't know if I have. It is really hard to choose a favorite, because there's so many things that I love about all of them, and there's also all these like moments in them that I couldn't put in the film. So the first one, he's from Virginia. He called 4 times, I think, but like what he called, and then like he called in like after, because he like cut out, and then he called like 3 hours after, and then he called like a week later, and then he called another week later, and then he called like a month and a half later after Biden got inaugurated. And that was really interesting, because his mood and stuff shifted and stuff, and it was just, he had different things to say, but he had a reason to keep coming back. And he's also just like so vulnerable with the things he said, but it was just really interesting. He's like in this place stating it, and then he was like, it still hasn't changed here, but this is where we are now. So he really kind of like used it and walked through where he was in his life to just this hotline. And it was just such a beautiful thing to be able to experience.
Absolutely.
So that's one that really stands out. Yeah.
Have you had any other updates like that, or has that really been the only one?
I posted the film back for people to be able to see on there, and then he like sent a message back that it was him in the film.
Wow. That's incredible. Yeah, that's I often like to ask documentary filmmakers if the subjects of their film have seen the film and how did they react, but this is such a unique moment where it's so, you have probably never seen the faces of the people that are telling the stories in your documentary, so it's kind of that difficult thing, but then you get to tell their stories, which is really exciting at the same time.
It is.
But it sounds like people responded to it well, or at least this guy responded to it well. Well, that is so incredible. It really tells something very powerful. What about your film are you the most proud of?
I think I am most proud of just the way in which the film was able to come together, because I saw this issue and I was like, this is something that needs to be said. And then I waited for a little bit, maybe a week, and I was like, I should just say it. I should just do this, because I'm a filmmaker. I can. And that I was able to accomplish bringing all these voices together, because that's what felt hardest. Is I had the idea for this hotline, but I was like, I have no reach. I don't have a huge social media platform or a news outlet. But then I just independently did it, and then promoted it through things, and people connected to the idea, and then it was able to become a finished project.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your finished project, for speaking with us today too. One last question for you. Do you have anything else that you're working on now? What can we expect from you next, or do you have anything to plug, anything to point people towards?
Yeah, I don't have any like specific projects that are coming out soon. I have in the process of being the cinematographer on 2 projects here in New York that we're trying to figure out how we're gonna roll those out, but they're very exciting projects. And then I have a couple of things I'm writing, but the best way to keep up with me is on Instagram at Nikos.Campbell, spelled as my name in the little bottom part there. Yep. So
Perfect.
that's really how you keep up with me. And yeah, thank you so much for this Q&A. It was really loved these questions.
Oh, awesome. Well, thank you all out there for tuning in, and enjoy the films.
Sweet. Thank you.